The story of Malcolm Little, before he became Malcolm X in Norfolk Prison Colony in the late 40s, it it's just one of the most powerful blueprints for this I've ever come across.
It really is. I mean, here was Anne who was brilliant, a master of strategy, of survival on the streets.
Absolutely.
But he hit a wall. He realized something very humbling about his own mind when he tried to get his goals down on paper.
That's right. He had that street mastery. He could talk, he could negotiate. But when he began writing letters to Elijah Muhammad, trying to articulate these really complex
He
thoughts,
found a huge gap, a practical deficit. His thoughts were fast, they were intricate, but his words on the page, his actual sentences, he described them as cramped and incomplete.
he was trapped in his own head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he didn't see it as an intellectual failure, I'm not smart enough.
No, it was more practical than that. He saw it as a severe physical bottleneck. He could feel the complexity of his ideas, but he couldn't land it in prose that was coherent and persuasive.
It's that feeling of knowing the destination, but you just don't have the vehicle to get there. He needed better tools.
And this leads to his mechanical fix, which, on the surface, seems almost absurdly simple.
It really does. He got a dictionary.
A dictionary. But it's what he did with it. He didn't just read it or skim it.
No, he started copying everything,
Yeah.
word for word from the very first page, including the punctuation. This wasn't just learning new words.
What was it then?
He was physically forcing his hand, his eye, his entire motor memory to encode the structure of the language itself.
Just imagine how unglamorous that task is. I mean, he describes the writing as slow and painstaking. His hand would cramp up.
And more than that, his pride ached. That's a powerful phrase.
It is. For 2 straight days, he said he wasn't really learning definitions. He was just wrestling himself into motion, overcoming that immense mental resistance to starting this huge task of literacy.
By breaking it down to the smallest possible physical action. Tracing letters.
That right there, that's the hinge moment. And the analysis here is so important for anyone trying to learn something difficult.
It is. Because that mechanical act, the physical motion of copying, it made reading possible. That created familiarity. And the familiarity is what eventually fueled his intellectual hunger.
He called the prison library a gym.
Right. He wasn't waiting for the motivation to go lift the heavy mental weights. He started with the smallest possible weight to just train his attention muscle. He realized he didn't need to feel like learning.
He just needed to start with that first page.
And keep going. That forced, repetitive, almost kinesthetic contact with the material was the real catalyst.
So we're distilling this down into what we're calling the first page rule. It's the ultimate antidote to procrastination when your emotions just will not cooperate.
Right. You beat starting friction by building competence through mechanical consistency.
So let's dig into that mechanism. Because for a modern learner, copying feels like busy work, right?
It does. But the sources show us it's a low-skill action that forces contact with the material in 3 key ways. Kinesthetically, with your hand moving, visually tracing the letters, and even acoustically, if you whisper the words.
And that bypasses the part of the brain that argues.
Exactly. It bypasses the higher cognitive functions, the negotiator that tries to talk you out of the work.
So why is that contact so important?
Because the second you make contact, the material stops being this big, scary, abstract thing. Contact creates familiarity. And familiarity immediately lowers that resistance, that feeling that screams, this is too big, I don't want to start.
And that resistance, it often shows up as what we call the default trap.
Avoidance disguised as taste.
Exactly. You say, oh, I'm not in the mood today, or this textbook is just too dense, or my favorite, I'll tackle this when I have a clear weekend.
Which never comes.
It never comes. But the real issue isn't the book's density or your mood. It's the high friction of just getting started.
And the first page rule commands you not to negotiate with the whole task. Don't think about the whole book.
No, just commit to the smallest, almost laughable unit that creates momentum. 1 page, 1 paragraph, 1 5-minute chunk. Malcolm X didn't promise himself literacy that day.
He just promised himself that first page.
So let's give the listener some concrete tools from this. To beat starting friction, you have to make the commitment, as you said, embarrassingly small.
It has to be. Your brain can argue its way out of an hour. It has a much harder time arguing its way out of 5 minutes, or one
Right.
problem, or copying 1 paragraph. The start has to be too small to fail.
And you can use that physical act of copying as a restart button. If you're reading a dense legal brief or something and your focus drifts,
Don't check your phone.
don't check your phone. Stop.
Okay.
Reboot the system. Retype a key paragraph. Rewrite your notes by hand, word for word. It forces your attention back because your body is now part of the action.
And you need to build what we call a default slot. This is about using environmental cues to bypass the decision entirely.
Same chair, same time.
Right. Same specific cue. Maybe it's a certain kind of tea or putting on your noise-canceling headphones. When the cue happens, the action of starting becomes automatic. You take the emotional debate off the table.
I like that. And also, adopt the hunter mindset.
What do you mean by that?
Don't just passively read. Actively hunt for something specific, a measurable answer. Pick one question. What's the author's main claim here? What are the 3 supporting points? And you read only until you find it.
So you're goal-oriented, not just consuming. Because passive consumption, just letting your eyes glaze over the words, that's what leads to feeling overwhelmed.
Totally. And track streaks, not outcomes. Did you show up today? Did you do the bare minimum? That's a win. Forget finishing the chapter. If you showed up for your 5 minutes, you succeeded.
So the micro step right now would be,
Identify that piece of difficult material, open it up, set a 6-minute timer, and just copy 1 paragraph. Don't try to be smart about it, just trace the words. When the timer dings, you can stop, guilt-free.
or you can add another 6 minutes. Because now the inertia is working for you.
Exactly, you borrowed the first page.
So the snap close maxim here, borrowing from Malcolm X, is when you can't find the will, borrow the first page.
Pure mechanical victory over apathy. I love it. Okay, so we've moved from internal inertia to, well, to external and social barriers. This brings us to Mary W. Jackson.
Right. This is where learning dies, not because the subject is too hard, but because the cost of showing up just feels too high, or the environment feels hostile.
Exactly. We're talking mid-1950s at what would become NASA's Langley Research Center in Virginia. Mary Jackson was already a brilliant mathematician, one of the human computers.
And she was given a clear path to a promotion, to become a full engineer. Her supervisor, Kazimierz Zarnecki, he really supported her.
But the path wasn't simple, was it?
Not at all. The fine print contained this massive systemic barrier. The promotion required graduate-level math and physics courses.
Okay.
And those courses were only held after work at the segregated all-white Hampton High School. She had the talent, she had the drive, but the system had literally put a gate around the classroom based on her identity.
And this is the moment where most people, very understandably, would just quit or find an easier way.
Of course. You justify it, right? I'm already tired from a full day of work. The system is rigged. I shouldn't have to fight this hard just to learn. I'll look at a place.
That whole internal dialogue.
That's what we call identity friction. It's the social and emotional cost of learning that makes us pull back and lower our ambitions.
It's not about the math problems, it's about the emotional labor of just walking into the room.
Right. She could have waited for the laws to change. She could have found a different job. But that would mean accepting a lower ceiling on her career.
Instead, she did something incredibly audacious and procedural.
She petitioned the city of Hampton for special permission to attend those night classes alongside white students. Just think about the sheer psychological weight of that action.
She wasn't waiting for the system to say she was worthy.
No, she chose to act now, despite the discomfort and the huge social risk of just asking for the door to be open for her.
And the real audacity isn't just filing the paperwork, is it? It's the repetition that came after.
That's the key. The city granted permission, but that was just the start of the work. She then had to show up week after a full workday to do grueling graduate-level courses, knowing she was the only Black woman in that room.
It wasn't a one-time heroic moment. It was a fixed, grinding schedule she couldn't back out of.
And the result speaks for itself. In 1958, she becomes NASA's first Black female engineer. The hinge moment was that decision to treat a systemic barrier not as a final judgment, but as well as paperwork to be solved.
And then committing to the discomfort of showing up again and again.
She didn't wait to feel welcome. She earned her seat through undeniable repetitive presence.
So this defines the principle we're calling structure plus audacity. Jackson saw that avoidance often comes from the social cost of learning, feeling like a beginner, confronting unfairness. Her solution wasn't emotional.
It was procedural. She didn't rely on finding the motivation to fight the system every single night.
No, she relied on a fixed commitment. She identified the requirement, the courses, she removed the gate, the petition, and then she accepted the cost, the fixed night classes. That procedural lock-in overrode her daily feelings.
And that is such a critical insight for the modern learner, especially when you're facing a new, intimidating field. The default habit treats these barriers as a final verdict. If it's hard to get in, it's not for me.
But Jackson treated it like an admin problem. Find the process, submit the request, and make the next step official so your feelings can't veto your progress.
Okay, let's turn this into some actionable tools. First, you have to define the gate.
Meaning,
Clearly identify the exact, concrete requirement that unlocks the next level for you. Is it a specific certificate? A portfolio piece? Pinpoint the one thing you actually need.
then file the petition. Take one external action that makes that learning path real. Email the coordinator, apply for the prerequisite, request the syllabus, make the barrier official, and therefore something you can officially remove.
And you must establish a night class cadence. This means scheduling 2 or 3 fixed sessions per week. They are non-negotiable. You treat them like a mandatory client meeting.
Not a suggestion you debate with yourself at 5 p.m.
Exactly. And crucially, pre-decide the minimum. You commit ahead of time. Even if I'm wiped out, I will show up and do 1 page of the problem set. You set the bar ridiculously low to ensure you never get a 0 for the day.
And finally, reduce reentry pain, which is so high when you feel like you don't belong.
How do you do that?
Start every single session by reviewing yesterday's last line, or the last problem you solved. That tiny bridge from the known to the unknown makes starting so much less intimidating.
So the micro steps for today would be, write 1 sentence. To become X, I need Y.
Then take one petition action in the next 10 minutes. Enroll, book the course, whatever it is, and put 2 45-minute study sessions on your calendar for this week. Lock them in.
And the snap close maxim for this, inspired by Mary Jackson, is, if the door is guarded, don't sulk submit the request and show up.
All right, our next challenge is about overcoming what we call high-stakes friction. This is when the learning you need is absolutely critical for your career, but it involves a ton of vulnerability or fear.
And our case study here is Warren Buffett back in 1952, dealing with a paralyzing fear of public speaking.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? Here's a guy who was already an intellectual giant, a certified genius with finance.
He could read a balance sheet, like a detective reads a crime scene. He had the focus, the patience. But this one, very normal business requirement, made him feel, in his words, physically panicked.
Talking in front of people, it resonates with so many of us who are great at the technical stuff but struggle with the communication.
And Buffett saw it. He realized that fear controlling his mouth would eventually control his career. He knew that leadership, fundamentally, requires being heard. You have to command a presence.
He saw it as a high-leverage skill gap that was threatening his entire future.
Right. The risk of not learning was too high to just ignore.
So his solution wasn't to, read a book on rhetoric or practice in the mirror. He paid to learn. He enrolled in a Dale Carnegie public speaking course for $100.
And that $100, which was real money in 1952, it turned a vague intention into a hard obligation.
The power of payment. It's more than just guilt, isn't it?
It is. The tuition acts as a financial lever. Once you've paid, you stop pretending you'll fix it someday. You have purchased an external constraint, a fixed calendar, an external deadline, a required social setting.
A structure strong enough to drag you forward even when your mood is screaming no.
And the sources show it wasn't some magic bullet, it wasn't an instant success. Buffett himself says he completed the course on his second try.
He dropped out and had to go back.
He did. The certificate he kept confirms the path was just repetition, failure, discomfort, and showing up again after you miss.
Yeah.
Just unglamorous mandatory practice drills.
So the hinge moment for the listener is realizing he endured this not because it felt good, but because not learning the skill was just too expensive for his future.
Exactly. He realized confidence isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you can buy, practice, and compound, as long as you can just endure the awkward minutes.
Which defines our principle, paid commitment learning. The brutal market truth is you don't rise to the level of your talent. You only rise to the level of your most practiced bottleneck.
And if your technical skill is a 10, but your communication is a 4.
The 4 sets your ceiling, every time.
And most of us default to what we call comfort-based development. We do what's fun, what's interesting. But success rewards what the role requires, and that's often the uncomfortable skill.
So when motivation is shaky, you buy an external constraint. Tuition, a high-stakes cohort, a public deadline, something to guarantee action.
And then let's be specific about what that $100 bought him. It wasn't just information.
No, it was forced repetition with stakes. Scheduled sessions, social accountability, mandatory drills. You're buying the structure because readiness is usually the reward for starting the practice, not the prerequisite for it. Okay, so let's break down the tools here. First, pay the threshold.
Choose a class or a cohort that you'd feel a real, tangible guilt for skipping. The tuition becomes a psychological anchor against your mood. If a free online course is easy to ignore, upgrade to one that costs enough to make you feel it.
Next, pick the CEO skill.
Meaning, target the high-leverage bottlenecks, the skills that give you disproportionate value. Maybe it's writing a concise memo or mastering sales calls or delegation. Don't just work on the fun tech skills. Work on the ones that unlock leadership.
And use an exposure ladder. Structure your progression. Start small, like a 60-second update in a team meeting, then medium, a 5-minute brief, then big, a 10-minute talk to an external group. Progress over intensity.
And this one is painful, but you have to do it. Record reps.
Yes.
Use video or audio once a week. It will expose all the habits your brain hides from you. Rushing, filler words, weak openings. Watching it back is the fastest, though maybe most painful way to get better.
And finally, ship public artifacts. Commit to creating a small, real piece of output that real people can react to. A memo, a short talk. Make the practice real.
So the micro steps for today. Write this sentence. My career bottleneck is I, and it's costing me I'm.
Then, within 15 minutes, enroll or request enrollment in a structured paid path. And today, record a 90-second explanation of your work on your phone and just watch it back once, focusing only on your pacing.
The snap-close maxim. Learn from Buffett's checkbook. If fear sets your limits, buy the structure and practice past your mood.
We've dealt with starting and we've dealt with fear. Now we have to tackle the long game, sustaining the grind. This is about showing up when the work isn't new and exciting anymore. It's just boring and tedious.
And for this, we have to talk about Jack Ma and his legendary 9-year bicycle rep.
This is maybe the ultimate story of unglamorous persistence, the anti-breakthrough path, as the sources call it.
Right. Hangzhou, late 70s, early 80s. Before Alibaba, before he was a titan, Ma Yun had this relentless obsession with usable English, not classroom English.
The kind that actually builds bridges.
So he designed a routine that is just. It's almost unbelievable, and it's sustained inconvenience. He rode his bicycle daily for years. It's commonly cited as 9 years, to a local hotel.
To do what?
To offer himself as a free tour guide, just to practice speaking with foreigners.
9 years.
9 years. We say that number too easily. Think about what that actually means. Waking up early, riding when it's cold, when it's raining, risking awkwardness and rejection every single day.
And choosing the absolute slowest, highest friction path to mastery, unscripted conversation with strangers.
He was prioritizing forced contact over convenience.
Yeah.
Every single morning.
And the real cost was the lack of immediate reward, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No applause, no degree, no paycheck, just showing up and choosing discomfort over ease.
It's the definition of sustained, slow-path labor. It's like making tiny, boring deposits into a bank account that compound relentlessly over time.
And that consistent, unpaid, awkward practice, it did more than teach him vocabulary.
It fundamentally built his identity. He went from being Ma Yun, the student, to Jack, the guy who could bridge worlds, communicate across cultures, negotiate. That conversational skill was way more critical to building Alibaba than any specific tech skill he learned later.
So the hinge moment isn't founding the company. It's the teenage realization that if he waited until he wanted to, or until he felt perfectly ready,
He wouldn't become the person he was trying to be. Repetition, inconvenient, unsexy repetition that costs you time and ego was the only engine that could build his future self.
this gives us our principle. Friction-first practice. The most valuable skills are almost always built in these boring increments.
And Jack Ma's approach says, instead of trying to make learning easy and comfortable, you deliberately put the practice in the path of your life in a way that forces daily, real, and slightly uncomfortable contact.
So it's about battling the mood trap.
What's that?
The mood trap is waiting for emotional safety or readiness. I'll practice when I feel more confident. Ma's approach just flips that entirely.
Practice first, confidence later, identity last.
Exactly. Learning isn't just passive intake like reading a book. It is active performance under light pressure.
And that bicycle ride, it symbolizes a commitment that doesn't need to ask permission from your motivation. If you want to get better at something important, you have to design a system that requires performance, not just consumption.
The feeling of, I don't want to do this today, is the friction you have to deliberately seek out.
Okay, let's define the tools here. First, design a daily rep.
It has to be tiny and non-negotiable. 1 email rewrite, a 10-minute language conversation, 1 micro pitch to the mirror, something you can finish in 15 minutes max.
And you have to practice publicly, lightly. You have to fight the urge for private perfection. Choose low-stakes exposure. Role-play a pitch with a colleague. Post a short summary on an internal channel. Exposure drives competence.
And use prompt questions. Don't rely on being brilliant on the spot. Keep a short list of tour guide questions ready to go to initiate practice. If you're learning management, have 3 standard questions you ask in every check-in. It forces the skill.
Also, track reps, not vibes. Stop tracking how you feel about your progress.
Just count the attempts.
Exactly. Feelings are weather. They come and go. Attempts are data.
And to beat that daily debate with yourself, tie practice to a cue.
Connect the rep to a fixed habit you already have. After your first coffee, before your first email, right after your commute. That way, the existing habit triggers the new, uncomfortable rep. No decision needed.
So, micro steps. Define your smallest daily rep 10 minutes or 1 deliverable for a critical skill you're avoiding.
Then schedule it for the next 7 days. Same time, same trigger. Make it non-negotiable.
The snap close maxim for sustaining the grind. From Jack Ma's bicycle years, your future isn't built by big moods. It's built by unsexy reps you refuse to skip. Okay, we've arrived at the final stage of learning when motivation fails. Mastery through mechanical refinement. We're past starting, past just showing up. We're now in the weeds of transforming competence into true excellence.
And for this, we'll look at Benjamin Franklin for refinement and Abraham Lincoln for the repetition of foundational knowledge. So Benjamin Franklin, as a teenage apprentice in Boston, 1721, he knew he needed to write cleanly and eloquently, to be persuasive, to be trusted.
And he was very aware of the gap between his own ability and the masters of his day.
Deeply aware. He was reading The Spectator, which was this hugely respected publication known for its refined prose, and he just realized his own writing felt clumsy and disorganized in comparison.
And that moment of realization, that gap visibility, is a real ego check. It's when most people quit. The brain says, I'm not a natural at this, I'll wait for inspiration.
But Franklin rejected that. His solution was structured imitation. He developed this powerful, almost scientific routine we're calling the mirror method.
It was intentionally tedious.
Designed to force mastery over his own weaknesses.
Let's break down the mechanics, because this formula, it can be stolen for any skill, right? Coding, presentations, negotiation.
Absolutely. So, step 1. He'd read an essay and write short hints of the sentiment in each sentence. He wasn't summarizing words. He was isolating the core idea, the structure of the argument.
Step 2 is the critical one. He forced himself to forget by laying the hints aside for a few days.
Why is that delay so important?
The delay is the difference between recognition and retrieval. If he rewrote it immediately, he'd just be transcribing from short-term memory. He wouldn't learn anything about structure.
So the delay forces his brain to retrieve the idea from long-term memory and reconstruct the argument using his own words. It's a true test of his competence.
Step 3, he'd rebuild the essay from his hints, trying to match the elegance of the original, actively generating output.
And step 4, the most painful part, comparison and correction. He'd compare his version to the original, sentence by sentence. He said it made him discovered some of my faults and corrected them.
Slow, humbling, necessary work.
So the core principle here is that borrowing excellence beats inventing it when your motivation is low. This method turns passive reading into active training.
It requires painful output and rigorous self-correction.
And it radically reduces decision fatigue.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask, what should I practice? The model, the North Star essay, it answers that for you. The feedback is immediate and undeniable.
So the tools from Franklin. Pick one North Star sample, a perfect pitch deck, a clean piece of code. Write one-line hint notes for the structure. Add a deliberate delay.
And when you compare, only focus on fixing 3 specific things on your rewrite. Refine. Don't try to overhaul it.
The snap-close maxim for Franklin's method. When you don't feel like learning, stop being original. Imitate, rebuild, refine.
Right, let's shift to Abraham Lincoln. We're moving from style to foundational knowledge. The year is 1860. He's mid-presidential campaign.
And a young man asks him for the best way to learn law thoroughly. He's looking for the secret sauce.
And Lincoln's response is just. It's so direct and brutally honest. He says the method is simple, but he immediately adds that it is laborious and tedious.
He refuses to sell a shortcut. He makes it clear. Mastery requires boredom.
His prescription was to start with the foundational text, Blackstone's commentaries, and read it carefully through, say, twice. Twice. Only then should you move on to the other core texts. And he closes with the 3 words that were basically his life story. Work, work, work.
This wasn't just advice. This was how he became a self-taught lawyer, grinding through foundational texts, rereading them when most people would just skim and move on.
And this defines our principle, the second pass advantage. The first pass through dense material is only for orientation. You recognize the terms, you get the structure.
That the second pass.
The second pass is where understanding actually sticks. It exposes the gaps you missed, and it moves you toward real competence.
This is so critical because it explains why so many people stop just short of mastery. The first pass feels like learning.
It does. You recognize the terms, you highlight things, but recognition is not competence. The second pass turns that superficial familiarity into deep internalization.
You move from theory to application.
And the danger is what we call completion chasing. We want to finish the book, check the box. Lincoln was all about comprehension chasing. Read it again, and then work.
We have to face the fact that if reading something a second time feels like a chore, that's probably why it's so valuable.
It means you've reached the part of the learning curve that will actually change your capacity. You're past the novelty and into the tedium required for ownership.
Motivation is optional. Repetition is not.
So, the tools from Lincoln. Adopt the twice rule for any core resource. A foundational chapter, a technical module.
Use Pass 1 to build a map. Sketch and outline, circle terms you don't fully get.
Then make Pass 2 active mastery. Don't just reread it the same way. Solve problems from the chapter. Or write a detailed teach-it note. Your goal on the second pass is application.
That forced explanation is so powerful. On the second pass, write a one-page, jargon-free summary like you're teaching it to a smart new hire. That forces you to really own it.
Micro steps here. Pick one resource you've been avoiding. Do a 10-minute first pass. Skim headings, circle 3 key terms.
Then tomorrow, a 10-minute second pass focused on defining those terms and writing 3 sentences explaining the main claim as if you were teaching it to a 10-year-old.
The snap-close maxim here. If it matters, read it twice, and let work beat your mood.
So the powerful theme across all these figures, from Malcolm X with his dictionary to Lincoln demanding a second pass, is this.
Truly successful people treat learning as a technical problem, not an emotional one. They just didn't wait for the muse or the inspiration or the feeling of being ready.
They engineered competence, they built systems, they committed to tedious, non-emotional action.
Copying the dictionary, petitioning for a class, paying for accountability, biking for 9 years, forcing imitation, demanding a second read.
They built a mechanical bridge of repetitive labor, and that labor is what generated the competence. Inspiration and motivation. Those were just the emotional rewards for getting to the other side.
They treated learning like a predictable factory, not some kind of magical garden.
So you now have 5 distinct mechanical methods to defeat 5 different types of learning friction. Starting, social, high stakes, consistency, and refinement.
Your goal isn't to find some sudden burst of will. It's to install an effective mechanical design built on fixed action.
We all spend so much energy avoiding this unsexy work. The copying, the scheduling, the paying, the awkward practice, the painful comparison, the rereading.
But the sources are crystal clear.
Yeah.
This is where all the leverage is.
So here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with based on all these mechanical strategies we've unpacked.
Which one of these 5 figures, boring mechanical habits, Malcolm X's copying, Mary Jackson's fixed cadence, Buffett's bot structure, Jack Ma's daily rep, or Lincoln's double read, which one is the absolute least appealing to you right now?
Because if you're being really honest with yourself, that's probably the exact habit you need to start today.